Okay, welcome to this lesson. So for this topic today, we're going to be talking about nouns. Specifically, under nouns, we'll be talking about gender and the definite article. Uh, this topic in Spanish is very tricky, especially for English speakers, because in English, we know a noun like chair, and we usually learn a few things about the noun, like, okay, this is how we pluralize it. We add an S and it becomes chairs. And, that's basically it. In Spanish, it's a little bit more complex. We have to know the noun, and we also have to know the gender of the noun as well, which is very important because for us to know the gender of the noun, we we will be able to manipulate it or add adverbs, adjectives to that noun, which would transform based on the gender, right? But we won't get into that just yet. But let's just jump into this lesson here so that we can begin. All right. Okay. So Spanish nouns or sustantivos españoles. So sustantivo is the word for noun in Spanish. So we're going to be learning how to understand the rules of nouns, how to master them, right? So here is a quick note. Remember, a noun is used to identify any class of people, places, or things. So it's some kind of person, a place, a thing that exists, right? So moving forward. So here we have some rules in regards to gender when it comes to nouns. All objects and nouns in Spanish are either masculine or feminine. All objects or nouns, all nouns in Spanish are either masculine or feminine, no matter what. Learning to identify the gender of nouns helps in using adjectives and articles correctly, and words that modify a noun have the same gender as the noun. So this is the part that I was kind of learning to. So here we have an example, Casa Blanca, which is white house, and hierro blanco, which is white iron. So I use these both because we are talking about the noun being feminine or a masculine noun, and then the adjective changes. So we can see we have blanca and blanco. So that's just a quick example there. Okay, so Spanish gender rules. So these are the rules or just the patterns. They're not perfect, but as you can see, I have highlighted the word usually. So masculine nouns usually end in O, R, N, L, Y, and we have this word like aje or AJE. That's for masculine nouns in Spanish. And then we have feminine nouns that usually end in A, DAD, TD, TD, etc. Right? Here are just a few examples. Um, for example, we have the word tren, which is train, masculine noun, zapato, cordon, right? Also masculine, ending with an N, uh, train, ending with an N, ending with an O, which is by far the most common in Spanish, the O ending for masculine nouns. Um, so we have some examples of feminine nouns like taza, puerta, and ciudad, right? So we can see here we have the DAD ending here. We have the A ending, which is the most prominent or most popular in Spanish for feminine nouns. All right, so let's continue. Okay, so moving forward, we have definite articles. Artículos determinados. Okay, so the definite articles, again, this is something that is very strange. In English, I would say the chair, and I could also say the wall, and I could also say the book. Well, we can say that in Spanish, but the gender affects the article. The gender affects the article that we're going to use. And specifically, we will talk about the definite articles. So, with the definite articles, these articles are used when referring to something already mentioned before, something specific or familiar. The definite articles in Spanish are el, la, los, las, right? So these are the definite articles. So these are really just different ways of saying the chair, or the chairs. So el perro es negro, the dog is black. We use el as a definite article for dog, as it is a masculine noun, and so we use the masculine singular definite article. La rosa es mía, the rose is mine. Here we have a singular noun, and so we use a singular feminine definite article. So as you can see below here, this explains all the different options for definite articles. So think of these as different ways you can say the, and then whatever that thing is, that noun is. So in Spanish, articles vary to match gender and number of nouns, right? The number of nouns just basically means the plurality. Is it singular or is it plural? For example, masculine singular, el, masculine plural, los. Okay, masculine singular, la, feminine plural, las. Okay, so this is very important because every time you need to say something, a noun is usually in a sentence, right? So the most used thing that you'll need to understand would be nouns and of course verbs as well. But you always have to talk about things. You have to talk about your, even talking about your day, right? Day is a noun that has a gender in Spanish, el día. And so we have to think about these things. So for you to think about these things, you have to understand and know these articles and understand the nouns. Okay, so let's move forward. Okay, so let's watch this YouTube video very quickly. It's loading. I think it's very funny. So let's go into it. You can listen.
All right, French, on to the next word. Hour. Is it masculine or feminine?
Oui, okay. Hour is going to be une heure, so it's going to be feminine.
All right.
Except when it's possessive, then it becomes masculine.
What?
Well, it's very simple. If it's an hour, it's feminine. If it's their hour, it's masculine.
But no, French, listen, okay? I agreed to let you have feminine and masculine words, which already was just insane, okay? But you can't have them switch.
But that's boring. Come on, you want to switch it up a little?
No, French, please.
Whoa, espera. A word can be feminine and then change to masculine? I didn't know you could do
No,
that.
Spanish, we are not doing this, please.
Wait, no, but I like this. How about this? How about water is el agua, but then waters, it's las aguas.
And once again, I'm assuming you guys are doing this to confuse me.
Confuse the Americans. Obviously.
Okay, so I think that video is extremely funny because it is true. There are some really strange rules when it comes to nouns, and it's really confusing to the Americans or the English speaking people. But yes, the word agua is a masculine noun when singular, and a feminine noun when plural, and that's something confusing that you just have to memorize. But for the most part, we should follow these rules that I'll be teaching you. Okay, so Spanish masculine nouns. O is a common ending for masculine nouns in Spanish. Examples include carro, which is car, libro, which is book, and plato, which is plate. Remember, not all masculine nouns end in O, but it is a very common pattern. Knowing this can help you identify the gender of Spanish nouns. Okay, so O, the most common ending for masculine nouns. Please remember that. Right? Don't just jump and assume that because it ends in O, that it is masculine, but it is the most common. Okay, so remember that. Since this is the same thing for A, is the most common ending for feminine nouns. So let's look at these examples. Mesa, table, silla, chair, and cama, right? Bed. So the same goes for the feminine nouns. They're not all the same. They're not all um, consistently ending with a, or even some masculine nouns do end in a. But we'll go over that in a second. Okay, so usually I would give my students, but because I'm recording this, I'll just answer it. So it says, how do we say the book? So in bracket, we have masculine and singular with the correct definite article. So it couldn't be los libros because here we have the book, but this is the ending of plural masculine, right? And so we have to go with el libro. It is masculine and it is singular, right? We have to look at the noun and see, is it masculine or is it singular? Is it masculine or feminine, and is it plural or singular? Those are the two questions for you to figure out what is the definite article that you need to use. Now, we're going to go over more of pluralization and the details of different ways to pluralize Spanish words. So that will be very helpful in the future. So as you can see, the answer is el libro. All right, continuing on, here we have common gender nouns. Common gender nouns. This is very normal, especially in English too, but we'll discuss what it is in Spanish. Sustantivos de género común. And so it says these are certain nouns that we can change from male to female depending on the situation. These are called common gender nouns. These nouns sometimes add an A or slightly change the word for the female version. These include animals and professions, etc. Right? This is very important. So remember, I told you a noun has to be either masculine or feminine at all times, right? And the only difference with the common gender nouns is that at one point you might have to adjust it to be either masculine or feminine, depending on what you're talking about. So in this example, we have the masculine version of doctor, which is doctor, then the feminine version, which is doctora, right? So we add a little a and it becomes feminine, right? Um, Here we have corredor, and then we have corredora, masculine and feminine. The masculine actor, feminine actriz. Masculine rey, feminine reina. So doctor is obviously, doctor. Corredor is runner. Of course, this one's easy because it's actor, and this last one is king and queen, right? So uh, the question is, what are some common gender nouns in English that can be male or female? Now, in English, it's not always as obvious. For example, a female doctor can just be a doctor, right? There's no physical difference in the actual wording. Just like I can say a baby can be male or female, right? And so also a cat. But in Spanish, for example, cat, gato is a male cat and gata is a female cat. That's very specific, right? So these are common gender nouns in English, like doctor, like baby, like boss. Your boss or manager can be either male or female. And so most times, it's not different in English. In Spanish, usually it's a little bit different. And that's the difference with the common gender nouns in Spanish, right? So moving on. Okay, so nouns that can change meaning when the definite article changes. Okay, so here we have the definite articles, can be male or female, el and la. So there are nouns that the meaning itself will actually change when we change that article. What does this mean? All right, so the masculine article, orden, el orden. So this means the order, an arrangement, right? Arrangement. So in English, we use this word all the time, and there's differences with this order and this order, which is a command. La orden, which is a command. So when I order someone to do something, or when I order my books in a row, right? When you're ordering something, you're organizing, right? So you have a certain order to something. So that's the difference with el orden and la orden, right? It changes the meaning. This one is another one, el papa, which is Pope, and la papa, which is potato, right? So it's very interesting. El Papa and La Papa. Um, so one is the Pope and one is a potato. El Capital, which is capital, money, money that you need to uh, probably run a business or start a business or something like that. And La Capital, which means the capital city. So the capital of your country or something like that. Okay. All right. So moving forward here, the days of the week. This one is very important to memorize because all of these uh, are actually, well, it should be days of the week and months of the year. All of these are always masculine at all times. All the days of the week are masculine and not capitalized. That's also something that is, I guess, a little bit different. I have them capitalized here, but they're usually not capitalized. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So they're used without the definite article el, but make no mistake, el lunes is correct because it is a masculine noun. Okay, so we have the months of the year. You can take a look and memorize this in your spare time. But we have enero, febrero, marzo, abril, mayo, etc. And then we have lunes, martes, miércoles, etc. For the days of the week, which are usually masculine. Okay, awesome. Okay, so for our last topic here are a few confusing nouns, misleading nouns in Spanish that will throw you off, that you honestly just have to memorize. And this is, I say memorize because you cannot use the patterns that I discussed earlier in this lesson about, for example, um, ending with DAD, ending with A, ending with O. You can't follow those patterns because these break the patterns. These are kind of irregular. They're misleading. So misleading nouns are nouns that have the ending of a specific gender, but are actually the opposite gender. Really confusing, right? These nouns are exceptions to the rules. So here are some examples. So feminine nouns usually end with A. As you can see, all of these have A, and then masculine nouns usually end with O. And so also even L too. So you can see this last one. So looking at these as a person that maybe has memorized the different endings, and that's usually one of the best ways to learn nouns quickly. I do um, think that you should memorize the masculine and feminine endings, but don't rely on them 100%, more like 99%, because in this 1% are some of these words and more that will throw you off. But yes, so masculine noun, el clima, which is weather or climate, and that's a masculine noun, of course. El problema, the problem. El poeta, poet. And then el poema, which is poem. La foto. And this one's tricky because I think that la foto is actually a shortening of the word fotografía, right? So I think that that might be why it's la foto. La mano, the photo is a picture, and la mano, which is hand, la moto, which is like a motorbike, a bike, la catedral, which is cathedral, right? So this is just a few of the misleading nouns. What I will say is that the best thing that you can do is to study and memorize the actual. Let me run through here. My bad. Okay, so go ahead and study the endings. These endings here, study them, memorize them, and then once you have them memorized, take take a look at some random nouns in Spanish. Take a look at some lists, maybe some Spanish texts, recognize some nouns, and try to um, recognize the patterns in the endings that you'll see um, in regards to feminine and masculine. Because really, you do need to know immediately for you to even use a noun correctly and efficiently in Spanish. You have to know the gender. It's of the utmost importance to also know the gender of that noun, because then you need to also use the definite article. And in the next video, I will talk about the other articles, indefinite article, and how we would use that as well as the definite article in our speaking and in Spanish.